I would just like to, re-welcome everybody. This is the Regina International Film Festival and Awards, and like she said, this is the first one. Over the next 2 days, there'll be 30 plus films appearing here that are both international, national, and local. I'm Andrew Perry, and this is...
I'm Amy Mantika, so I'll also be co-hosting with Andrew this weekend.
I made the film Ron Taylor, Dr. Baseball, along with my brother. Basically, this was a project of passion, so we co-directed, co-wrote, co-produced, and sat and we had a room together even, so it was very much a story that we wanted to tell. It's obviously Ron Taylor, my name's Drew Taylor, you probably assume it's on my father. He was a professional athlete. He was a Major League Baseball pitcher for 11 years. Most of those were the St. Louis Cardinals and the New York Mets. And he actually won a World Series with the Cardinals in '64, and then again with the New York Mets in 1969, which was quite a famous year. That was the amazing Mets, or the miracle Mets, going from last place to first place. And so they took a few of those players over to Vietnam for the USO tours, but because they weren't performers, I guess a lot of concerts would be put on for some of the troops over there. They weren't performers, so they spent most of the time going through all of the field hospitals and combat hospitals, talking with injured soldiers and just spending some time with them. And it had a really great effect on his life. He came back and concluded his baseball career shortly after, retired from baseball, and applied to medical school. And he became a student at 35 years old in medical school and became a doctor. And that's how he concluded his life.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah. Very nice.
Just retired recently, that's why I say concluded.
Okay, yes, of course. So I guess with it being your dad who was the subject of your and your brother's documentary, how did you decide, okay, we're going to make this film now, this is the year, we're going to collaborate as brothers? How does that fall into place? What motivated that?
Well, I mean, it's I think any film is probably mostly governed by getting together the financing. Like, we always wanted to do this film, and we'd wanted to make it for probably a couple of years before we ended up starting production. So we talked about it. We knew, kind of the film that we wanted to make. We knew some of the people that we wanted to interview, and so we even reached out to them and put together a nice plan. I mean, there's 5 Hall of Fame baseball players in the film, and 9 All-Stars, and a really great cast of people that contributed time. So it was they were very generous for us that way. And then we started pitching it, and it was interesting because he has such a career in baseball, and he's a member of the Canadian Sports Hall of Fame and the Baseball Hall of Fame in Canada. We thought that would be the kind of natural place, but it ended up being Bravo Fact, which is a program through Bell that ended up accepting this project. So I mean, it's amazing that an arts channel saw the merit in this film, and that was also something that meant a lot to us, because we always saw it as the crux of the story, the climax of the story was going to Vietnam, and that inspired him to have a career in medicine, not necessarily 2 world championships and things, which are great on their own, but we really thought that was the special part. And so having Bravo support that and accept this was really great for us. So we thank that program. I don't know if anybody's ever made shorts through that program, but they're fantastic to work with.
What was it like bringing this up to your father as well? Asking him, hey, we would love to do a movie about you.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because my father and I have a very interesting relationship, as does my brother with him, but I followed in his footsteps. So I ended up, I have a doctorate in biomedical engineering, and had to make sure that I was a doctor. And I ended up playing professional baseball. I was with the Blue Jays and the Phillies for a number of years. So for transitioning that kind of into film, I don't think my dad really understood everything that goes into making a film. And my brother went to school for film. He went to Queen's University and took film there, and has been in the industry from the very beginning. So I think he did understand it. We had talked to him about doing it before Matthew and I had even made a film together. And our first film was actually a larger feature doc called Our Man in Toronto, which is about the Iranian hostage crisis, and essentially is the Canadian story of Argo, if anybody's seen the Ben Affleck movie. And so we premiered that at TIFF, I guess it would been 2 years ago now. And I think my dad finally realized everything that goes into making a film by watching us go through that process, and you know, just seeing kind of the response to the film, and you know, the hours that we logged, you know, making that, and so that kind of made him understand and what we wanted to do with his story on a smaller scale, because we were making a short, so it's a 20-minute film. So that helped a lot for him to understand what we wanted to do. But I think he's a shy guy. He's confused as shy. I think he's more humble, but you know, he doesn't talk about himself. And that's sort of right off the top of the film. There's a scene where, you know, another baseball player, while he's now a doctor, had no idea that he had played 11 years in the major leagues and had won a couple World Series and was a closer. So he, you know, would be a guy that would go in there and save the game. And this guy got his first major league save, and he walks into the clubhouse. And he goes over to the doctor, who he looks at as the doctor, and says, "Oh, Doc, you'll never be able to feel what I'm feeling right now. Like, you have no idea. I just got my first big league save." You know, and you know, Dad led the New York Mets in saves for 5 years in a row. So, yeah. So anyway, that kind of summarizes his personality. And he didn't correct him. He just said, no idea, and walked away. And that's him. So I think. You know, approaching him was kind of interesting because he is this shy guy, and his first response was like, "Who's going to want to watch this?" Like, honestly, you know. But no, he came around. He was very patient with us, gave us a lot of time because he's so humble and he doesn't look at the camera. He looks down during the interviews. We actually did very long interviews with him to try to get those moments where he actually makes eye contact and you can see energy and things. So it was an interesting process. And interviewing your father, I was doing the interviews while Matthew was. Over my shoulder, and he would kind of interject at moments, but he thought just with the whole kind of like medical thing, Matthew would be behind the scenes, kind of making sure that our DOP and different things were going well, and I would be asking the questions. But it's interesting interviewing your father. That's an experience that I think everybody should do, whether it's on film or not. Is to just, you know, prod, ask about your parents' lives, you know, find out what they went through. I learned a tremendous amount about my dad that is going to continue to influence me throughout my life.
Well, it definitely translates into the film you guys have created. He comes across as a very humble and obviously very, you know, achieved man. I guess with you co-directing with your brother, so you're interviewing your dad, the film's about your dad, and then that other dynamic there of you and your brother working together to say, this is how we're going to represent him. What was that like?
Well, Matthew's amazing. He's very much like my dad. He's very quiet and humble, and you know, it was great working with him because we actually have good complementing, you know, aspects to each other, and so we're not very competitive. My brother and I are very opposite. You know, I'm 6'5", he's 5'6". You know, like, yeah, we just like going through high school, we're a year apart, and no one in high school knew we were brothers, even like the last name and everything. It's actually kind of comical. But yeah, we work amazing together, and that's what we've learned. You know, going through the first film. So in this one, it was natural. We fell into our roles. This was the first film that Matthew jumped in as a director on. So in the other stuff that we've done, he was more on as the producer, and I was directing. So this is the first one we just kind of said, okay, we're going to do everything together, and it was seamless. Like, it really was an amazing experience, and we've become closer even through making this film. If that's possible. We were already very close, but yeah, you know, he notices things I don't, and I notice things he doesn't. So I think that just makes it a better result.
Yeah, what was it like to dive into your father's past with your brother? Like, you've probably heard stories from him, you know, throughout most of your life, but to like really get down into things, what was that like for you two to like travel through that?
Yeah, it was interesting because, you know, like, everybody has moments in their past that, you know, like, are kind of comical and they're probably self-conscious about. So it was interesting interviewing actually not Ron, but some of his teammates, and, you know, talking about going and partying after winning a World Series and what that was like, and the debauchery that ensued, you know, and things that, you know, would probably, you know, he would kind of cringe if he thought, you know, like, this would end up on camera. So that was very funny, like, seeing your father as, you know, just, I guess, like the parties and kind of like the antics of being a Major League Baseball player, what that was like, and how he handled that, and talking to other of his teammates. But then it was also interesting because I was born in '82, so he was long retired, like over 10 years before I was even born. He had his kids a little bit later. So, I mean, we'd never identified him as a baseball player growing up. He was a doctor. And, he was the team physician for the Blue Jays, so he kind of fell back into that baseball role. But we, we're too young to really kind of know him as a ball player. So it was kind of interesting to see players talk about what kind of a pitcher he was. And me, I was a pitcher as well. So, I mean, for me, knowing that, like, I have a very different personality when I'm on a mound, facing a batter, throwing the ball as hard as I can, and trying to, like, defeat them. And identifying my father is, instead of this physician that is so caring, and I've seen him, like, just show an unbelievable amount of concern and care and invest so much time in trying to help people with their health. Seeing him as kind of like this bulldog on the mound that took no prisoners, and having his old teammates describe him as that was kind of exciting for us, because we got to kind of relive moments that we never got to experience because we were born after he finished playing.
So when you finally show your dad the film, the finished film for the first time, what was his reaction?
Well, it was interesting. He saw a rough cut, and we were talking earlier. Some of the other filmmakers that are here, like, showing a rough cut is like the worst thing ever for a director. Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit daunting, but I think he wanted to just feel comfortable with the dialogue that was in the film and make sure that we got it right and things like that, because we are going back in time before we were around, and so that was important. So we wanted to make sure that he was comfortable with what we made. So we showed him the rough cut, but the first time he saw it on a big screen, with an audience in a theater, was up at Cinefest Sudbury, which is a festival, great festival, and I think that's kind of like where I just saw him get a little bit more emotional about the film, and kind of understood the amount of effort is different than watching it on like a computer screen and then like seeing it on the big screen, and that's so that was kind of a nice moment for us to sit down, and he saw it all color corrected and sound edited, and so it's just a smoother film than what he saw. So that was fun for us, for sure.
Well, it sounds really rewarding, right? To do the film on your dad and then finish it, and it's obviously turned out really nice. Is it going to be, so it played in several places, correct? Like where all?
So we premiered it in Canada at Cinefest Sudbury, which was just recently, was it a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago? And then in the US it premiered the week after, so just last weekend at the Hollywood Film Festival. Had a great reception there. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because we were really self-conscious about releasing this film. When we did a film on, what was going on in 1979 in Toronto, and we weren't as almost worried about kind of like people's reception of the film with this one, because it's about your father and it's such a personal story. This was a project of passion, not something that like was a commercial kind of like no question, like, yeah, we'll get finance, we'll make it, it'll be entertaining. There's a little bit more, I guess, concern on our part. We just wanted to make sure that people enjoyed it, and I think he felt that as well. So, at Cinefest, we ended up winning audience favor, and so that was kind of a little bit of a validation for us that, people do enjoy this film. This is a story that people do want to tell, and it's not just his sons that want to make this. That people do enjoy it. So that was a nice moment just to kind of validate that we made something that people enjoy.
Okay, well, I think on that note, if we have any questions from the audience, we have a few. Okay, do you want to go first?
As children growing up with the celebrity status, what was that like going to school in high school?
Well, it was interesting. Because I played baseball as well, a lot of my friends were like like kids that were playing baseball and were baseball fans. So, we just looked at him as dad, right? He was dad, and that's what he was to us. But for some of the guys in class or on the baseball team, they would always be asking him, Teacher, why don't we go back to your place after school today? And, maybe let's whip home for lunch, and why don't we go to your place? And I'd just be like, okay. And of course they'd walk in and they just try to, go over to Dad and chat with him about baseball. So it was kind of fun. I was like, I thought you want to hang out with me. Let's go. Yeah, so no, it was fun. I had a really great group of friends growing up. Matthew played baseball as well. So we had a good group of friends that were into baseball. So it was always kind of fun going back and kind of sharing some of my dad's, he has ball from the 1969 World Series, things like that, and they like seeing those kind of things. So it was fun. Yeah.
It's definitely not in everyone's house, right?
Yeah. No, it was interesting. Just seeing pictures of him when he was younger and in the uniform, standing on a mound, and kids just wanted to see that stuff. So for us, we walked past it every day. So we were used to it, right?
Yeah.
Spoiled, I guess, but yeah.
Yeah, obviously your daddy's story is very inspiring, and watching it is very, very telling. So I'm just wondering, in the film, your mom doesn't appear anywhere. Was it hard to keep her behind the filming, or was it easy?
That was the easiest thing. She didn't want to be on camera. I begged her. I wanted to include her, and I asked her. And so every day that we would interview Dad, I think it was only like 3 times that we actually sat down with him and did interviews. I would say, okay, Mom, get ready. We're going to interview you at the end and then ask you some questions. She'd be like, oh, no, don't do it. So we would always kind of do those things. So in the running credits, you'll see right off the very first kind of card after the cast, there's a line that says matriarch Rona Taylor, and she's my mom. So we wanted to credit her and acknowledge her, the influence that she had over the project, and she's amazing because she was there many days, I guess you could almost call her like a first AD or something. She was just there making sure our staff was fed and everybody was happy and turning off the furnace and unplugging the fridge and running around and doing all of those kind of things for the sound. So she was very involved, but it was hard to convince her to get on camera. And I think she was working up to it. I think if we had kept on shooting, it is a short, so we were shooting forever. But I think that if maybe the shooting had gone a few more weeks, maybe we would have been able to convince her. But not within the time frame that we were working with.
Yes.
Are you hoping to get onto a documentary channel or something? Because it's a very, very interesting story.
Thank you. No, we'd love to. Right now, we actually had a great response in Hollywood. It was nominated for Best Short Film there, and one of a distributor in the U.S. saw it, and they're highly interested. So we're in negotiations with them right now. Hopefully it'll show on. I think that there is an audience on the sports angle in the U.S. Baseball is a huge popularity sport down there. So I think that there's a good chance that it'll end up on TV somewhere in the U.S. on a channel. It will show on Bravo eventually, and then because of part of that bell, we're hoping to show it to TSN and see if there's interest there. We haven't yet. It's literally just been 3 weeks that we finished the film, so it's very fresh. I think this is the 3rd festival we're part of, so this is the beginnings now. Thank you so much.
And, watching the film, I thought it was such a great story. Is there any plans for you and your brother to make a narrative version of your dad's life, like I guess not as much a biopic, but at that time, taking that time the Mets to becoming a doctor and kind of encompassing that into a feature film. I feel like that could be something that would really resonate, especially with the strong response from the short documentary.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a fantastic idea, and I get your wavelength. I think there's some really interesting moments that you could recreate and do in a beautiful drama. It was interesting. I had a conversation. I showed it to one of my friends in Toronto, who's a hockey guy named Kiprios, who was played for the Leafs among other teams, and so he's a big sports guy, and he's now one of the guys on Hockey Night in Canada. And so he watched it and he said like, oh, this is great. He said, are you going to do a drama now?
Yeah.
So that was his first response. It was identical to yours. I mean, I think that there is definitely something there. That entire team, that 1969 New York Mets team, was a very interesting time, and I've always thought that you know, even if it's not just on Ron, but that team as a whole, there's a number of really amazing people that were members of that team, and it took a bunch of amazing people to go from a last place team to then going on to win the World Series, and that team has been referenced in a lot of dramatic feature films. I mean, Men in Black 3, the flashbacks to 1969 at the stadium, that's the team he was on, 1969 Mets. Frequency, another big Hollywood film that, you know, he proved that he knew what was going to happen in the future by saying
Mets, yeah.
what happened with the New York Mets
Yeah.
that season. There's been a couple others, and there's a tremendous amount of interest around that team as well. So that would be something that I would be very interested in, if not on Ron specifically, but there's a lot surrounding that team that I think would make a fantastic movie.
Awesome.
So I was wondering about, like in documentaries, like you want to be sensitive to your subject and portray them the way they want to be portrayed, but you also kind of want to make your own movie. So I was kind of wondering, were there any points where your dad was wanting something different, but you kind of wanted to push it a little further?
Yes, you know, you can't change who your subject is. You know, I definitely understand that, and I don't think that you should necessarily try. I mean, obviously, you want to get content out of them, but the way they deliver it sometimes, and I was very conscious of the way he was delivering the content. When he tell a story, he was always looking down, like I said earlier, and I kept on asking him, can you make eye contact with me, like tell me the story, look at me. And you know, that was one thing that I was always conscious of. But then, you know, when you watch the film, it comes across that, like, you know, that's his mannerisms, that's who he is. You know, he's a kind of a quiet guy. He looks down, he's humble, he doesn't brag, and I think the film's better for that. And if I had forced him, you know, and really pushed it hard for him to actually change his behavior, I think that might have been lost. So, you know, you can kind of like, you know, assume that you're going to be, you know, that you're right as the director, you want more eye contact, but really in the end, I think it worked out great. You know, he didn't listen to me, and the movie's better for it.
All right, well, on that note, I think we'll conclude this interview. So thank you so much for coming and talking with us.
Yes, and thank you so much.